Hi, Gitweero here. Leo Tunapika, Gitweero. Yes, I know you've seen the title of this video and you're wondering, Gitweero, what is that? So, in my local dialect, which is Chuka, which is a dialect of Kimeru, this is what we call this dish. So Gitweero is a dish of bananas that's cooked together with matumbo. So this is something that my mother used to make for us when we were younger. And sometime last week, I prepared this on my Insta stories. By the way, if you're not following me, follow me there. And I got quite a response from many of the people who mentioned that their parents, or rather their mother, used to make for them a version of this dish. And that's where I also learned that the different dialects of Meru have different names, call this thing differently. So there's some people who call it Rumonde, there's some people who call it Torigotua Matumbo, and as I've said, in Kichuka we call it Gitweero. And something to note about this dish, it's very similar, or rather it's more or less the same thing as what we have in Uganda, known as katogo, and what we have in Tanzania as mtori. So they are very similar. And in this dish, what happens, you cook together the matumbo with the bananas. This is where I add that if you're not a fan of matumbo or you don't eat matumbo, you can swap that out for meat. What I love about having matumbo for this is that it's a very nice way to eat matumbo. Matumbo is a very cheap cut of meat, and a little can go a long way. For example, when you buy a kg, you can divide it twice and have that as 2 meals. You can even divide it 4 times, because when you cook things together, it's a way to stretch out an ingredient, because as opposed to just frying a quarter of matumbo on its own, when you mix it with this, you end up stretching the meal. And that's what you're going to make today. I hope you're excited. If in your community you make a version of this meal, please let me know. I want to learn more about it. You can let me know in the comments. And with that, let's get started. Our star of the show is the matumbo, or tripe. So you start by washing it. Normally, where I buy my matumbo, the butcher does a very decent job of washing it, though I've just washed it just to be sure. And then once you wash the matumbo, the next step is to boil it. So matumbo is a very tough cut of meat, and it will require some boiling for it to soften, so you need to cook that fast. And when I'm boiling my matumbo, I'm not using a lot of ingredients. I'll add some bay leaves, some salt, that's pink Himalayan salt, and I'm also going to add some chilies, though this ones I'll remove halfway through. Reason being, I don't want it to be very hot. Other things that you can add when you're boiling, you can add some ginger or garlic. This is all according to your preference. So, as I've said, since it's going to take long to boil, I'm going to use my pressure cooker to boil this. If you have an instant pot, electric pressure cooker, you can use that. If you want to save on gas, maybe you can use a jiko. So, start with the matumbo. I'll only use half a kg, but I want to boil all of it, and then I'll store the other half when boiled to cook it as something else. So I've put salt, the chilies, the bay leaf, then enough water to cover the matumbo. So I'll let this come to a boil, and then once it's come to a boil, I'll cover my pressure cooker. As you can tell, I'm using a manual pressure cooker. I'm due to buy an electric one. I'll cover, and then I'll let it hiss, I think, twice, and our matumbo will be ready for the next step. As the matumbo is boiling, we're going to prep the rest of the ingredients, which are the cooking bananas, or matoke, potatoes, carrots, tomatoes, garlic, ginger, onions. Not factored here are spices, which I'll walk you through once we start cooking the meal. The only point I have to give, which I think I gave in my plantain versus cooking banana video, is that when you're peeling this, it usually has a sap. In my vernacular, we call it matinoho. So for you to prevent the sap from sticking onto your hands, you oil your hands first with some cooking oil thoroughly, then you peel. As you're doing that, make sure you've also lightly oiled the knife that you're going to use to peel the bananas with. So other people make slits, then boil this in some water to make removing easier. So whatever tickles your fancy. Can you hear it building up? That was the second hiss. I think I'll allow it to just do a third one just for good measure. Now that our matumbo has boiled, we are waiting for the pressure cooker to release steam. We'll start on everything else. So these are some cumin seeds, about a tablespoon. Dry pan. I want to toast them for about a minute or two until they are fragrant. I love cooking with cumin and I love dry roasting them fast. And since cumin are so tiny, even if I don't grind them, they're not cumbersome when eating. When you can start smelling that toasted cumin, now we go to the next step. Add in the oil. This is about 3 tablespoons. Then our onions. So here we want the onions to cook until light and translucent. I'm going to reduce the heat slightly to allow the onions to cook well. Now adding garlic and ginger. I've just crushed this in my mortar and pestle. Again, here you just want the garlic to be fragrant. You don't want it to burn. So this normally takes 30 seconds to a minute. Not very long. Honestly, any meal that starts with onion, garlic and ginger, which I always call the holy trinity of cooking, is a good base. It's always a good base when you have these 3. So it's already fragrant. Now I'm going in with my spices. I'm going to add some garam masala. Stir it in. Then some paprika, about half a tablespoon of paprika. So some black pepper. I'm holding off on putting salt. Reason being, I'm going to dissolve a beef cube in water to create a stock. And as you know, the beef cubes that usually have sodium, so I'll hold off salting until later. Then my tomatoes. So I'll cover and let the tomatoes cook, and then now we go to the next step. So our tomatoes have been cooking, they've cooked down. Now we are going to add our boiled matumbo. And give it a good mix. Our matumbo is cooked, so the next step is to allow the bananas, the potatoes and carrots to cook. Oh, and by the way, I should add, it didn't hiss just twice. It ended up hissing 4 times, which I think was better because it's cooked just right, the matumbo that is. In goes the carrots and bananas and potatoes. So here there is no science per se to it. You want it to cook together, and going by how it's cooked traditionally, the food gets very thick and saucy in the sense that you allow the bananas and the potatoes to really cook down. So I'm adding the water with the beef cube in it. So I'll add water just enough to almost cover this, just enough, and then we'll see as we go on. Here it will be hard for me to tell you the amount of water to put. You have to cook by sight. I'm adding 2 rosemary twigs because I want to, and bring this to a boil. Heat is on high. I want to bring this to a boil. Then I'll reduce and allow it to simmer and let everything to cook. And then that's when I'll also taste for salt and adjust accordingly. Let's check on it. Ooh, it's bubbling away. Look at that color. This is because of the paprika. Check whether that's my son, he's come from playing. Ooh, the banana is done. Same case to the potatoes. but we want them to be a little bit, what do you call it, mushy, because traditionally they are actually mashed. I won't do the mashing. Okay, I'll mash like 3 or 4 of each just to help the sauce become soupy. But I feel like we're done. Let me give it a taste. As you remember, I didn't add any more salt on account of the beef cube. Yeah, needs just a little salt. Give it one more taste. Oh, perfect! You see the way it's thickening? The potatoes and the banana are contributing to the thickening. And I think we're done. I'm just going to remove this rosemary twigs. And now we can serve our Gitweero. Traditionally, as I've said, it's mashed further. I am fine with the way it is. If you want to mash yours, you can. As you can see, the food is very thick. And our meal is done. As you've seen, it's very easy to prepare. Actually, the most time-consuming part is the boiling of the matumbo. But if you have a pressure cooker, that hastens the process. And you can also boil a big batch of matumbo, store it in the freezer, and cook when ready. So we're going to give it a taste. I'll try and get everything in one bite. Wow. So this is one of those hearty meals that just makes you think of home, makes you think of a hug. It's very filling, it's very hearty. I like the uses of the garam masala, the paprika, the cumin also add to the warmth of this dish. And how would you serve this? You can serve it with some sauteed cabbage on the side, just to bring a crunch to it. There's someone who said they love their brother loves pairing it with rice. No judgment here. I understand matoke and rice can be very good, but essentially that is it. And it's like a one-pot meal. Yeah, and there's something also my mother used to do at times. You see, when everything was done, my mother would tear some spinach and throw it in. So now it becomes everything in one, because now it also has spinach in it. So that's something that you can do if you want. Thank you so much for watching. In the description box, I'll leave a link to my blog, tunapika.com, which has the detailed recipe on how to make this Gitweero. And also don't forget to leave me a comment if you make this in your community. Let me know how you make it and what you call it. Otherwise, from me, Gitweero, kwaheri. Gitweero. Do you know Gitweero sounds very similar to kitoweo?